Okay, welcome back to my studio practice. I've been absent for a few days on health grounds, but I'm feeling a bit better right now. And so let's tackle the project. I'm just straightening up that camera there so we can see. Okay, today we're working big shapes to small shapes, and we're working dark to light. And so we have this space to play with over here. And if I go over to the palette cam, which is over here, let's bring it in. I have got some indigo, which is a blue-black, and there we go, it's very tacky. And we've got some yellow ochre, and that blue and that yellow should make a kind of greenish colour. And yet I'm not sensing it, I'm not detecting it. So if I pull in some of the if I'm pulling in a little bit of the cadmium yellow light, I'm getting a fairly dark green. Okay, and I could use this. I can use something like that to build in my, well, a base, if you like, for all my dark greens. I can modify that. So, yellow ochre didn't work. Indigo and cadmium yellow light did work. I'll pull in a little bit more yellow. Drop in some more water. It's going to kind of sap green and a lot more indigo. There we go. That's a green that we can play with. Now, what kind of shapes can we have? Well, if we look at long shapes, then Rousseau seems to have these very long kind of palm leaves extending up the way. So long palms. Drifting upwards. Okay, and then I have a copy of the Dream painting by Rousseau in front of me. So it has these palms curving up the way, making these curved shapes. And I'm using a flat brush. Let's see. Have we gone back to the... There we go. Back to the demo class. Here we are. And what we're doing is we're bringing in some of these darker shapes. Some curving up the way. And a lot more of these larger forms drooping back down. I have a copy of the original on the screen in front of me. and so these take a turn that direction. So they're a very square leaf. But ending in a fine point. Now, I'm wondering if I should bring out the edges of those with kind of lemon yellow. Can we see that? Does that work? Can you see those? It's a detail and we know it exists. Now we did some research and we saw the kind of leaf forms which were possible. So there was a kind of blob shape, kind of palmate blob shape. So like a hand, and so palmate, but with ragged edges. Which point outwards and down. So here we are, we're looking at the kind of large shapes, and we're going from large to small and dark to light. This kind of suggests to me that we should have more of the palm leaf shape, which is this shape here on the painting. And we could have a bit more of those to break up the surface. So we could have long bendy shapes coming to a point. And of course, if you remember correctly, we have a background, which is the sky, and then we have a midground, which is broken up into two, a rear midground and a forward midground. And the forward midground is probably here. We mapped it out in white so you can see it, dulling it back down with green so it blends in. But this is roughly the space that we're looking at. And I can see a kind of fountain shape as well that Rousseau uses. So these are like large ticks. Tick. Tick. Tick down. Tick up. Tick down. Tick up. There is something about the mixing of this indigo and yellow, cadmium yellow light, which seems to be allowing for a dark leaf shape outlined with a little bit of lighter yellow. So it's something that's just happening quite naturally, and I'm pleased about that. If I bring that leaf form down, and that actually fills the V shape that we created when we were talking about musical terms in art. We were talking about contrary and parallel motion, and so that's useful. There, we can have some broader leaves. If you remember, we looked at the Rosemary & Co calendar, catalogue, and we saw how different brushes made different marks. And as well as different marks, there's different directions, different kind of growth directions, which are helping to inform the artwork. I was intimidated by this artwork for a couple of days because I was finding that, I fell out of my depth trying to find the Rousseau that's in me. I found that very difficult. I felt kind of lost for a while, but now I feel a little bit more on track. So that's it. The dot is such a powerful image, and I do try and preach that in mark making, a spot or a dot is a very strong image. So what I'm doing is, if we go over to palette cam again, so bringing up the palette and moving across there, you should be able to see it. I'm bringing in a lot more of this indigo. Now, the paint is acting in a very claggy manner. It's quite unpleasant on the brush. And mixing even with the yellow, it's just clogging up the brush and is proving to be very gloopy. But what I'm trying to do is work from my large shapes to my small shapes and from dark to light. So the indigo and the cadmium yellow is making a very natural kind of green. Very plausible one, but something about the mix and the age of the paint, because I'm using up old stock of my paint, is not the most pleasing. It's not the kind of inky mix that I'm looking for. You can see it's quite pasty. And when I add a little bit of water and linseed oil mix to it, it goes this kind of cloudy yellow way. Let's try it on the thing. That's okay. Dots are very powerful shapes. Back to the demo class, bringing it in now. And so there will be slightly more yellow in the mix. It's more of a kind of pea green. And so what I want to do is to contrast with that mass by putting down dots. And I've chosen dots at that area because the mass is a block, whereas dots are small individual pepperings, if you like, of colour. And the reason for this project at all is because I'm trying to learn about the feel of water mixable oil paints in general. I managed to avoid using them during my 6-year BA honours with the Open College of the Arts. And so now out the other end by a couple of years. I just wanted to explore the medium. Now, if we speak about that as a frequency, you can see that the next thing that I'm about to do on this has a greater frequency. For instance, more smaller dots in the same area. So it reads differently on the surface. So the frequency of here is kind of slower and less busy, and here a lot more busy, much more active. But again, we're working from dark to light and from large to small. I think we could have some lobed shapes, like these ones here up in the skyline. Some lobe shape would be interesting. So we have some void here. So if we do some kind of more kind of oval blob shapes, that's interesting. And we could bring them in, I suppose, from the side. You will notice in Rousseau's work that he does actually break the picture plane, and he does bring in material from, from outside the picture plane, as if it's creeping in from the side. Again, the imperfect mixing of the paint here has left a dark mark with a yellow striation through it, which is actually working in my favour. And what I've gone for is a kind of scooped dropping motif, which is adding a new kind of rhythm and texture to the paint. And also quite joyfully, it's going on in a very intuitive and immediate way. It has an immediacy about it, which I quite like. I'm enjoying the palmate shape, so I think what I'll do is I'll bring in a little bit more over here and maybe change the direction of some and have some palmate leaves going in this direction, forming a kind of clover arrangement. In terms of coherence, the green isn't an ideal match for the blue. We've got some more kind of squarish palmate shapes going in there. What else can I have? I do believe that dots are very, very useful. So. But yeah, the green doesn't sit as well against the blue, the kind of weird blueness of the trees. And so I'm tempted to actually pick out the trees a little bit. Let's try some long thins, like grasses, kind of grass shapes. Move them across. What we don't want to do is fill out the space so much that a bit of big broadleaf there, that we remove all the space for animals or surprises to be included in the mix. So that's okay. Now using this indigo and this yellow, cadmium yellow as a base, I can introduce other colours to it, other colours to the mix. For instance, some other greens that we happen to have, like this. If we go over to the palette again, we have a lovely, vibrant but cool viridian. So what I'd like to do is go to a different brush, work the viridian, and see if I can pull it into this. I pull that material into there and get another dark green. Now that automatically feels a lot more syrupy, a lot more workable than the other green. Let's try it as a tester. Back to the demo class. The demo class here. Okay, so where we have dots, we can have long fins emanating up and out. So there we go. So the long tapered leaves now being drawn in act as a contrast to the short staccato lines, dots that were placed before. So very deliberately trying to create contrast. Can I get some long, yes, some long bamboo striated grasses. Yes, indeed. So, whereas where these palmate shapes here, the rhythmic opposite of those would be kind of spots and dots, like little leaves and ferns, like these ones here. Lots of little leaves going off. Let's make up this mix a little bit more, a little bit richer. Dull it down a little bit with some yellow ochre, just a tad. And can we add in along with ferns reaching out. So yes, we can. And more plants with little dots and things to create contrast. I think there's space for some palmate grassy type additions with their leaves going off at right angles, and that will help reduce the kind of blue effect that's there. But again, I'm marvelling at the skill of Rousseau, because he makes his look all very effortless and plausible, and I can see that there are struggles for me with this. More of these little leaves, creating a dense structure to the jungle. But I'm sensing, as I look across at his original, which I have on the screen, that he tends to outline a lot of his shapes with highlights. Down this bottom left hand corner here, I'm trying to bring in some small leaves in a downward trajectory to create another rhythm, another dynamic. Can I get some more palms there? Some more grasses. And so we're going from large shapes to small shapes and from dark to light. So as you can see right now, we're very much on our darks. Let's make these leaves here very, very broad indeed. And the artist that I am is screaming at me to do some sgraffito work like this, to scratch in some details, because that helps me actually locate the shapes that I'm working on. Those threes seem a little bit too contrived, so I'll put in some fives. There we go. I am actually wondering that if I go very, very dark with this green, I can recover a little bit of what I've lost in these tree shapes here, which to me are a little bit too blue. So I suppose that's another thing that I'm learning to admire about Rousseau, is that the greens, which for me are difficult to control, just look at the website, just look at the YouTube page and see how I did the greenfinch to help me learn to cope with greens in my art. It's a colour that I struggle with. In his jungle images, everything seems to fit. It seems to make sense. So, I have gone from dark, and I need to be introducing some lights. So, I suppose the best thing that I can do is to start introducing more yellow. So I've just put out a little bit more yellow on the palette. Let's call up the palette again. So I've put out a little bit more, as you can see here, some more cadmium yellow light, and beside it some olive green, which is a very dark green. And I wish I had zinc white, but I've only got titanium white. Zinc white is a much, much gentler white for mixing with. And let's see. So I could pull a little bit more yellow into that mix that we made earlier. and see if we can pull out some highlights. Yes, I can. Okay, so a little bit more yellow. And a little touch of white to desaturate it. The white will have a kind of cooling effect on the colour. There we go. And like I say, Rousseau does seem to outline or put a highlight on the side of the foliage to help bring it out, to make it more legible. And that is too abrupt. So is it because I've got too much water in the mix? Okay, so let's see. Let's try it here. Well, that's okay, that works. This doesn't. So that's way too vibrant. It will need to be knocked back. What I'm doing is I'm visiting some of the shapes that I've created already and breaking them up a little bit more with the lighter colour to increase the level of complexity in the image and also to draw some details. So what I can do is I can scoop around one side of all these oblongs, these kind of kidney shapes that we've got coming in from the side, so I can help reiterate them with some lights coming in here. And again, giving the illusion of increasing complexity. I'm going to avoid the large palmate shape. It's there for a reason. But here we go, we can add in much smaller leaves, little details. A different shape, a different frequency. These large palmates can be outlined down here, so they become a lot more legible, their shape. We have these kind of fern shapes coming out. And let's mix it up a little bit, add a little bit more white to that. See if we can dull it down. Give it a kind of chalkiness. That'll do it. So it's just occurred to me that by outlining shapes that are already there, we seem to increase the frequency, and therefore it appears that there's more of the image. There's more versions of the object that we're looking for, whereas it's just the same object with different highlights on it. So I can see a reason for highlighting to add complexity and give the illusion of numbers, increased numbers. So that's something that I hadn't thought of before. Let's bring out some highlights here. And if they go in a different direction, it'll look as if there's more overlapping forms. like so. We put in some grasses, some shapes in. That small amount of white has helped add layering, like the ferns that I'm putting in right now. Okay, so I want to add in more yellow. And I saw that in the original that Rousseau has banana clusters. He has banana shapes. So I think what we'll do is we'll put in some banana shapes, although they might not be easily read as banana shapes. Because on this dark here, we put in some bananas. They actually look more green. I suppose another thing that I've learned is to be confident with the mark making, which is another element of Rousseau's genius, is that it's all very script-like. So, many people say that they can't draw or paint, but when they write their name, they write it with a certain kind of fluency, and that fluency in painting gives a very good sense of confidence. Let's see some more dots and things to build up this jungle texture. Just the complexity of forms. And yet it isn't. It's just the repetition of frequent forms. How about those are half and half? So the leaves half down the middle, like so. And again, with Rousseau in mind, faithfulness to a light source is not an issue here. It doesn't matter where the light is coming from. It doesn't seem to be too much of a anxiety or concern for him. Then what we'd like to do is have more of those kind of palmate forms coming in a different direction. How about very large, a very large form here. Some very large coming in from the side. And of course, as I work them, I blend them. But I don't want to blend them all similarly in the same way. What happens if I bring white into the most yellow part? I get a different kind of chalkiness, a different kind altogether. And what can I do with it? Wow. Again, that's us going with the fern form. And just adding on top of existing shapes. Trying to get this illusion of complexity. So again, going from light to dark and from large to small. Sometimes he puts in these little oranges. So I'm going to put in little green oranges. And leave it for the viewer to figure out what they are and how they're being supported in the artwork. You know, how are they there? Some more dark areas. Let's see. An area that will support it here. Trying to nullify that blue, which I kind of regret. Into these greens. So there we go, we've got a little bit more. Can we knock that back a little bit with more white? Which I've lost my white. There. Can we have lianas and material? Coming around the trees. Let's see, these ones here. Okay, so I'm playing now and aware that this is, largely my there's a lot more of me in this. There's no way that I'm going to become Rousseau by making this painting. But the original question, if you like, was, can you self-actualize by copying some other artist? An art theorist, a gentleman called Nicholas Bourriard, made that statement. And while I'm not becoming Rousseau by making a painting in this style, I am, however, developing my own visual language and becoming slightly more fluent at it, and also, developing my aesthetic sense by trying to think in Rousseau's aesthetic sense. I wonder if I can create a detail on these. Many leaves are variegated, and so what I'm trying to do here is see if I can put striations on them in softened white, made chalky with the addition of titanium white in with the cadmium yellow light. Again, helping me to define the forms through outlining and And even though the line is getting broken in places, that's actually adding to the organic feel of it. So I think outlining is working for me at the moment. Some are variegated, some are just being highlighted on the sides. I feel this one could be variegated. So on the edge, broken line down the ribs and creating some kind of detailing while not being hopefully too intrusive. But I've got some lighting, and I'm finding this difficult to see because the paint material being wet is picking up the ambient light of the room, and so I'm not actually seeing all the material. That rippling there has worked, so I'm going to try ripples as when everything is green, it's quite hard to identify different things that are going on, and so we have to do that not by color but by texture, and so by stumbling upon rippling as a way of giving a different rhythm, a different tempo to the mark making. That's actually working for me. Again, some small details in here. Spots are very, very effective at creating different rhythms. A lot more white. Can I bring in a little bit more yellow into that mix to offset the white? So the white is giving a chalkiness. And what does that do? Okay, so very, very light. I should maybe use it very sparingly. Again, trying to outline some of the images I've already created. Can I add in some more leaf forms? Yes, I can. And so it suggests that maybe I could superimpose a new form. In the darkness of the jungle. More rippling. I'm trying to think where needs some variety. So trying a kind of pressing motion there. Okay, it's now getting to the stage that I think my jungle has become quite jungly. Maybe if I go back into some darks, I can put in some. I've got some lights on top. Okay. I had a lot of fun playing there. I think in many ways my lights are too light and could do with being knocked back somewhat. Let's see if we can knock this back a little. Because when I look at Rousseau's work and compare it with my own, he has a lot of varieties of dark, so everything is visible within the dark. But it's just so cleverly done that it seems that I have gone far too yellow far too quickly. Now I could resolve that by, when glazing a blue or some such, to knock everything back a tad. But that is that space, that's the rear of the middle ground done, except for the small creatures that inhabit the space, because birds and monkeys and things are hidden within the gaps. And so I think the next thing now is to put in some imagery. Now, Rousseau's bird of paradise or songbird or elephant may not resonate with me. They're not personal to me. And while I'm trying to create an artwork, oh wow, did I not? Oh, didn't show the work being created. I just showed the mixing palette. Wow. While my artwork here is trying to respond to the artwork of Rousseau, I still want to include images in it which are personal to me. I'm not trying to be Rousseau, I'm trying to be me responding to the artwork of Rousseau. And so if I use any kind of imagery, I'd like to put in imagery which is meaningful to me. And I have been to Mexico and Costa Rica with my family, and we're very fond of hummingbirds and sloths and toucans and lots of creatures there. So it's possible that it might be nice to put in imagery which is more salient to us in our life than just merely doing a copy or incorporating Rousseau ideas. Okay, so thank you for visiting. Thank you for spending your time with me. I hope you learned something. I hope you found something that was useful to you, and at least go away feeling inspired to be creative wherever you find yourself. Thank you for viewing. See you in the next one. Bye bye.